tell something happening in the initial future?
Well, it's probably...
British MEP Sharon Bowles is on the Times top 100 most influential people to watch in 2012 list. The thing is, as head of the Parliament's Economics Committee, she's become one of the most pivotal figures on the European financial regulation scene. So it's no surprise that everyone wants to pick her brains when she appears at a conference in Brussels. Whether it's competition rules, tax provisions, or the ins and outs of the Euro-sovereign debt crisis, Sharon's your woman.
Well, it's always like this. I mean, obviously, days are different. There are some days when I'm chairing the committee, and so... But as soon as I leave, yes, there'll be various people who want to talk to me about things. These events, it's always, you know, full of lots of bankers and lobbyists, and they want to talk or want to pick up on the ideas that I've had. They actually watched what I've said in committee on the web stream. Most of it, they could get a reasonable idea of where I was coming from, I think, anyway. Let's see. I was hoping that I would get away this evening after the trialogue, but I've now come to the conclusion I won't get away until lunchtime tomorrow, because there's just too much work to be done on amendments. And because I'm going off to Singapore and Hong Kong in the Green Week, I've got to do lots of things for that. All this furniture, some of it was thrown out because I made room in my office for a bigger table, and that's been parked there now for 2.5 years. These are our trunks that we have to pack
for Strasbourg.
Papers to take to Strasbourg, yes. At the moment I'm locked out of mine. We've lost the key to the padlock again, so we have to come and get security to cut it open.
I think they've done that, by the way.
Have they? Oh,
yeah.
God, that's good. So this is the big office that is meant to be mine, but in fact my assistants have it because they need the space. I studied chemical physics and maths at university, and then did research on semiconductors, so I usually describe myself as a semiconductor physicist. Then I went on to become a European patent attorney, so that means I was doing lots of, you know, drafting that was both technical and legal, very relevant for the real economy and the innovation, and I was very happy in that job. I suppose at the same time as I was working in that profession, Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister, and we were going through a recession in the UK, and I didn't like the severity of the cuts to industry and research because it was something I knew about and cared about, and I suppose that's what prompted me to be interested in politics, because there's not much point just complaining about something, you have to try and do something. So I decided that I would try to help write policy for a political party, but when I went along and said that's what I wanted to do, they also said, well, you have to sort of demonstrate that you know what it's like trying to sell policy on the doorstep, so you know, we think you have to do your duty standing as a candidate and all this kind of thing. So I did, and yeah, and over time I did get very involved in doing policy writing, but I suppose because I'd already worked in a European dimension, I was keen on the European side of politics and felt comfortable with it, and so stood as a European candidate, and you know, eventually got here. Only took me 20 years to get elected. Right, so every day that we come here we have to sign in somewhere. So you either sign in your committee meeting, which I usually forget to do, but then they usually do have evidence that I've been there because I've chaired it. Or in plenary, or if there isn't an official meeting of that variety, there's a little book here. So I'm on page 5. So here I am. So that proves I'm here.
A lot of absent MEPs today.
Well, as I said, most today will not be here because it's a Thursday of the group week.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I enjoy the technocratic aspect of it. So in a sense, you could say it's my time now. because of the crisis, because there is a need to be so technical about things. So I'm much more driven by getting it right in the technocratic sense, perhaps, than in the political sense, which is unusual. But it seems to fit the bill at this particular point in time. And obviously, I have some sort of political objectives, which is generally to maintain, free and open markets. But that doesn't mean without constraints, and obviously one wants to protect consumers and those things. But these are quite generic requirements, really.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a meeting in what I call committee wars with the chair of the Legal Affairs Committee, because some of the legislation is relevant to both committees. This is on accounting, and obviously as far as it affects banking and that kind of thing, it's the responsibility of my committee, but as it affects ordinary companies, it's the responsibility of his committee. So when we get the legislation, they'll be the lead committee on this, but we have to go through it and say, well, these are the bits where you've got to take the amendments from us. So here we are. Well, I think I was really quite to the front of pushing forward in banking things, saying, well, we can't just have sovereign bonds as the things that banks have to hold, that we actually need to make sure that there is more diversity. And the Basel Committee and others have changed the rules on some of these. I can't claim that they were only listening to me, but I think that sometimes it falls to me to be able to put squarely into the public domain what is a feeling of discontent. I mean, if you look at a finance minister, it's very difficult for them to say something until maybe it's wholly substantiated, or that'd certainly be the UK way of doing things. We tend not to launch ideas out there until we've fixed the plumbing, whereas I can launch the ideas out there, although they tend to know I've probably got some at least outline idea also of how the plumbing might work.
Sharon Bowles has just been re-elected as chair of the European Parliament's Economics Committee, where she'll stay for another 2.5 years.
There are people who would prefer that they were in the chair rather than me, but we've just been through all that, so I think hopefully they're reconciled. And I mean, there are people who want to score political points. I'm not sure that there are necessarily people who just think, well, they hate me personally and want to do me down. They've probably got better things to do than that.
Sharon Bowles believes that the worst case scenario for Europe's sovereign debt crisis is over, but it will take years to pay back all the debts.
I think it's going to go on for a long time, because it's going to take a long time to pay down these debts. One hopes that we can get to a stable situation, but I mean, if you just look at some of the pointers, the European Central Bank has done these long-term liquidity operations, lending to the banks for 3 years. I mean, there is a part of me that says, how are we ever going to get that money back out of the banks? This is a very big injection of liquidity that is, let's face it, propping up the European bank system, and that will take quite some time to unwind, especially if we can't manage to get growth. Well, I've now actually got to start my preparation for committee wars with the Legal Affairs Chairman, where we work out who does what in accounting. So I have to get on my pen.